People have guards, and art museums have guards to protect the artwork. We actually have to have guards to protect the individuals that visit the museum. We give them these facts about what anti-Semitism looks like. It doesn't always look like the Holocaust, of course. Even though I work at a Holocaust museum and people know it, I still hear people say things that I have to check them on.
There were these videos with AI of Hitler speaking in English. You hear the German version, which I have no idea what he's saying. It just sounded like this angry man. But to hear it translated and to watch him speak that way was jarring to me. I was never more proud when I visited Dachau of our country than when I saw those pictures.
General Eisenhower made it a point to make sure that those photographs were taken at liberation so that people had evidence of what had happened, because we're still living in a time where people are denying that the Holocaust even occurred.
Imagine dedicating 25 years of your life to carrying the emotional weight of humanity's darkest chapter. Today's guest wakes up at 3 a.m. obsessed with finding new ways to share stories of resilience. She's the driving force behind Southwest Florida's Holocaust Museum, bringing a genuine World War II boxcar to our community and stewarding the fragile memories of local survivors. Wait until you hear her powerful breakdown of what it means to be an upstander in today's world. Let's step into the conversation with Erin Blankenship. So I remember passing by that box. I've passed by that boxcar for years and decades. I guess the Collier version of this was started by some students in a middle school. Is that how it came about?
Our school was, our museum was started by a teacher named David Bell at Golden Gate Middle School. And he gave his students a project, and they created a in-class exhibit. And people in the community found out about it. And after their unit or whatever was done, it went into storage, and then they opened it up to the public in some other spaces. And once the school was kind of done or wasn't able to do it anymore, then the Jewish Federation heard about it, and some people got together, kind of wrapped their arms around the project and created a museum.
That's how it came about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they got do all of them have a boxcar? Like, and you worked at another one before too.
Yes. So no, not all. Every Holocaust museum has a boxcar. I think there might be, I want to say like 7 or 8 in the United States at various Holocaust museums. There are a few Holocaust museums. You know, there's one in Illinois. There's several in Florida. There's a couple, or actually 3, I think, in Texas. And of those, there's 2 boxcars there. There's 2 boxcars here in Florida, and a few others in some other places.
And are they the actual?
Yeah, ours is a World War II era boxcar. So there are several in the U.S. I think all of the ones that the museums have are all European boxcars. Ours is from Austria, but none of them have any definite proof that they were used for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, the Nazi railway system that, or, you know, the trains that they used to deport people from all over Europe, really, I mean, you know, with the exception of places like Sweden and England, those places didn't have any deportees, but they were coming from all over Europe. So it's very likely. I will say, I don't want to advertise for this other museum, but the museum where I was, the boxcar there is the only boxcar to ever have evidence found that it was used to transport civilians, because boxcars were used for cattle and even used to transport soldiers to and from war, or to battlefronts and things like that, and of course cargo. But that boxcar, when it was being conserved, they found a child's ring in it. So, or I should say somebody with a petite hand. And so that's the only one that has some sort of definite kind of evidence found in it. But I will say that, you know, the Nazis were excellent record keepers. And despite that, and despite the fact that all of these boxcars that are here in the country have serial numbers on them. None of them were ever recorded as far as their they have transport lists. The Nazis kept a list of every person that was on their transports, but not necessarily by boxcar. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Why are there these museums? I remember thinking that to myself in Naples, like it used to be on the trail just south of Pine Ridge Road, and seeing this boxcar there.
Well, I would say that if you look and you watch the news, and you look at current events, it's very evident why there's a need to teach the lessons of the Holocaust, and that's what these museums do. And I think that at least is in the case of our community members felt that there is a need to continue to teach this history, and wanted to fund and create a place where students can come and hear the facts and the truth about what happened during World War II. And not only that, but hear the stories of Holocaust survivors, because we know that in terms of making those real connections and developing empathy and really inspiring people to action to make a better community or to make positive changes in their world, it's through individual stories. So preserving and telling survivor stories are really key for us.
Yeah. You, as more time goes on, will become the voice of those people because there's so few of them remaining. And you're that vessel for those voices and carrying that forward. What stood out to you in the people that you've met over the years? Because you've been doing this a long time.
Well, I mean, I think I actually talked about this the other day. Survivors are all, or at least the ones who are telling their stories, they find it to be a necessity to tell their stories. They feel an urgency. I mean, that is the biggest thing when survivors are telling their stories or say sign up to speak to a student group or to an adult group or whatever. It's because they know that these stories are important for people to hear. Because we know that during the Holocaust, there were far few people that were willing to stand up for their neighbors, whether it was just, a simple thing of feeding somebody who is hungry, or I should say a seemingly simple thing.
Yeah.
Or, some people who actually took up arms to resist. Too few people did that. And I think survivors want to tell these stories because they want to show that all of us living today have the opportunity to make positive changes in another person's life, whether it's sticking up for someone in a bullying situation, to challenge bias. Right now we're seeing a huge, horrible influx of anti-Semitism. And now, even now, survivors are finding that their stories are even more powerful than they were 10, 20 years ago because of what's going on today. So I wouldn't say, it's not like they're surprises, but every survivor story is so unique and so inspiring. And I've worked with survivors of all different types of stories, survivors who were hidden by their neighbors who, they're non-Jewish neighbors, or survivors that, were interned in a camp or in a ghetto, or, survivors that, fled to Denmark and, were saved by fishermen who ferried them to Sweden, all sorts of different stories. And I will say that the one thing that I've seen in survivors is their resilience, to just overcome. And they're usually the most happy, generous, thoughtful people you could ever meet.
Yeah.
And I've known quite a few and unfortunately lost many of them. But, we're lucky today that we still have a few left that are willing to tell their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resilience, I think, is a such a perfect term. I read the book and it changed my life forever. A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And then had an opportunity a couple years ago. My wife had a business meeting in Germany, and then we went to Munich and we took a train to Dachau, and I could feel the emotion right now just thinking about it. And I remember seeing the wall of the prisoners, and it was a picture. It was a big picture. They were emaciated and frail, and there was nothing left of them. But they had huge smiles on their faces, and it was because the American troops had just arrived, and they were, being liberated, and the what they had to endure, I will never ever know. But what they went through, and that moment where they had nothing, they were nothing, and this happiness on their faces. See the American soldiers there. It just left a mark on me that, being there physically and being in the spot where Viktor Frankl talks about where he was there, and just that was. There's no way that could be put into words in any way, like the experience of that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I can see the museum having that impact. Being in a boxcar, how they transport boxcars weren't designed for people to be in. They're not made for that, and the circumstances.
Right. I mean, it was a horrible experience, and while we don't try to recreate an experience of a Holocaust survivor or a victim in a boxcar or even in our museum, I think it just gives people the opportunity, at least when seeing our boxcar, to get up close and personal with an artifact that's really become a symbol of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And to hear how, for so many people, the boxcar or a boxcar was really that first place where victims encountered death. Because, they were forced to be in these boxcars sometimes for days on end without food, without water, without facilities. And, people died on these trips. And so it's really a privilege to be able to interact with an artifact like that.
Yeah.
And to be able to share it. I always say it's a privilege to be able to share these stories.
How do you determine where the line is of you want to show what it was like, but you also have to be, I don't know, you if a kid is coming to see it, do you have to, where do you decide, how do you make that decision about what's too much to show or what's too much to see?
Well, I think there's the age, right? So for example, we don't encourage student groups for under 5th grade. And that's because I think murder is a complicated and horrific story to have to tell.
Yeah.
But when you have to tell essentially 10-year-olds or 11-year-olds about the mass murder and persecution of 6 million people, innocent people, including 1.5 million children, that's a very complicated issue. I think it's a complicated issue for adults to map their...
To fathom that number, yes.
So when for kids, that are 11 years old, it's very difficult. So, for example, when we have school groups, we do have school groups that are in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade. When those younger ages come in, we actually talk more about rescue stories. For example, they do an activity when they come to the museum about the Danish rescue, which I mentioned was when in 1943, Danish fishermen, all non-Jews, and other citizens hid the Jews for several weeks in October before bringing them to the coast and ferrying them to Sweden, which was neutral. It's a wonderful story about how the average Joe can really make a difference in somebody's life. And, those types of stories I think are really impactful. And when the kids come and they're from an older group, they might hear different types of stories. We have a survivor that is still telling his story, who as a child was interned in a transit camp in Holland called Westerbork. And then in Theresienstadt, which was in what was then Czechoslovakia. And that was often a stopover before going to Auschwitz. They were lucky in that they were never deported to Auschwitz because they had citizenship papers to El Salvador, I think. So we have people that have experienced a little more difficult history, although I don't like to compare suffering for older groups. So we try to tailor them to the groups. We also look at what the kids are learning in school and try to teach them to go along with what the teachers are already doing in their classrooms. But as you know, we want people to understand what it was like through survivors, through their stories. So we rely heavily on survivor testimony. We have several places in the museum where people can watch clips and listen to survivor tell their stories, and all sorts of stories. People who were sent to Auschwitz, or a survivor's story when they witnessed Kristallnacht, which was a pogrom in 1938, when the Jews of Germany and Austria were basically victimized through this, what was meant to look like spontaneous riots against the Jewish community, but was not. So there are all sorts of stories we tell, but always through the eyes of survivors. And the objects and artifacts that people see are also from survivors and their families, and they're all people that settled here in Southwest Florida. And I think that's always something we like to point out, that, you know, this seems like a very distant historical event, and in some ways it is, but a lot of these people are still living here in this community.
And keeping the study of history in the foreground, I think is, and you mentioned that Florida has a mandate to keep that in the curriculum, which I think is fantastic, that they're not going to pretend history didn't happen.
Yes.
They're going to hide it or say it never was, and to keep it in the foreground. I guess, what is the your relationship to this? Because you've done this most of your career, a lot of your
my
career.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
I don't have a personal connection to this history. I'm not Jewish. Actually, I take that back. I'm not Jewish, but now I feel like I have a personal connection because the survivors that I've talked about have all been my friends. Some of them close because they would volunteer at where I used to work, day in and day out in the gift shop, or telling their story to kids, or helping us fold envelopes, whatever. And they were really wonderful, great people. So I do have those personal connections. And I think that, there's a misconception that, it's the Jewish community's problem to tell this story, or it's the Jewish community's problem to work to combat anti-Semitism, especially now. But it's not. It's our problem. This is a human problem, a problem of hate, of seeing others as less than. And I feel like, I'm a human being, therefore it's my responsibility. Laying aside even my personal connections and relationships with our volunteers and our staff and Holocaust survivors, those are all very important to me. But I do this because I need to, because it's the right thing to do.
What is it? What is anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism, plain and simple, is Jew hatred. It's the hatred of Jews, or hatred and persecution of Jews. And unfortunately, sometimes it's called the oldest hatred because it's been around since the beginning of Christianity. And we see it cycle and change sometimes. There's different ways that anti-Semitism can look. Under the Nazis, they chose to look at it through a racial lens. And, we see it today when people are saying, Jews control the media or Jews control the government. I mean, this is such a small population of the world's population, that it's literally impossible, first of all. And also to blame the ills of the world on one group of people is absolutely ridiculous. So unfortunately, I think last year the ADL reported a 344% rise in anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. over the previous year, which is it's mind-boggling. I've been doing this work for 25 years, and we've I've never seen it like this. No other museum, there's not very many museums that have to have armed guards to when people walk in the building. People have guards, and art museums have guards to protect the artwork. We actually have to have guards to protect the individuals that visit the museum and our survivors and our staff.
Wow.
So, and it's because of anti-Semitism, because even though we are not actually a Jewish museum, we tell this story, which happened to the Jewish people. We're not actually a Jewish museum, but we're seen that way through the community, and that's fine. But organizations like ours are targets. And I've seen that in the place I used to work when it was vandalized a few times, actually. Most recently in 2021, I think. And there's been, if you look at other museums, there's and Holocaust centers, education centers, there's definitely been violence.
So this is just
them.
taught hatred, like hatred to teaching people just to hate because, like,
right. I mean, I think that sometimes anti-Semitism can be very insidious in that, people use certain terms that become unfortunately normalized. I don't want to repeat them. So, just things about Jews and money, or, they don't even think are anti-Semitic, but they're based on age-old stereotypes, and certainly not positive stereotypes. And I think, I see it in things that are handed down from parents to kids or from their peers, from peer to peer. And, we try to make sure that students and adults that come to the museum, we give them these facts about what anti-Semitism looks like. It doesn't always look like the Holocaust, of course, but so that they can identify it when they hear it, when they hear it in a conversation, and I do all the time. Still, people, even though I work at a Holocaust museum and people know it, I still hear people say things that I have to check them on. So we want people to be able to identify what it looks like, and to be able to have the language and the knowledge that they need to counter it, to say, hey, wait a minute, what you're saying is incorrect, and here are the facts. So that's what we try to do. And whether it's teaching about the Holocaust or teaching about contemporary anti-Semitism, or some of these stereotypes that led to the Holocaust.
Recently, there were these videos released with AI of Hitler speaking in English and saying what he was saying. And that was so disturbing to me, because I've never, you hear the German version, which I have no idea what he's saying. It just sounded like this angry man. Yeah. But to hear it translated and to watch him speak that way was jarring to me, to see it in a way I'd never seen it before, because I just had in school just kind of written it off as this wacky guy, like who's angry, but he was articulate in what he was saying and got a mass of people.
Yeah, millions of people.
To believe in this, whatever he was making up, and just getting that. And so I love that there is this study of history to see, because history does tend to repeat itself over, and to understand, like, how could this many people, and there's a book, Dr. Jordan Peterson, one of the books that he talks about a lot is about these police officers, I believe in Poland, and how they were doing atrocious things to people, and they knew it was wrong. They knew it was not right to do, but because the masses were going with it, was so hard to dissent, is what he was saying. Like the psychology of a human, when the masses are going one way, to go the other way was very, very difficult, and they would do things that were horrible, and they knew they were horrible, and this mass population ended up with that mindset. And right.
I mean, it during World War II, the Nazis would not have been able to murder 6 million men, women, and children without the help of Polish policemen or Ukrainian policemen and other collaborators in all of the areas in which they got occupied. They relied on the cooperation of those people. And of course, not every Pole was a collaborator. There's many who rescued Jews. Too few still. There's, I think a lot of people like to point out that so many did, but it was still too few. So, we also teach about that, about how hard it is to step away and break away from your friends or from your colleagues who are saying something, and to stand up.
Yes.
But that's why we always try to, lay out the facts, give people the tools they need to contradict that type of thought. We see it happen all the time, especially with social media.
Right.
And I know we're trying to do. So last year we had a propaganda exhibit about this, and we're creating a what we call a pop-up exhibit that we can send to schools, and we're doing this over the summer so that they'll have it for the next school year, focused on not just propaganda during World War II, but propaganda in general and media literacy, which is it's one of the mandates or benchmarks for teachers is to teach about media literacy, so that students who think they're getting the real facts on social media can say, okay, wait a minute, do I need to go back and look this up? Is this true? What are the sources, and find out for themselves? And so that's going to be a major focus for us in the next school year. We're winding down with school groups and school tours, although we still have a couple months left of a busy education schedule. But that's something we're focusing on because it's proven to be extremely important right now.
Yeah. Yeah, propaganda, his ability to spread propaganda, spread his message.
And there's good propaganda, and we talk about that, advertising, right? Or there's, flyers that were dropped by the U.S. Army during the war in civilian areas to warn them, and those types of things. But there's the propaganda that we saw during the Nazis times were, showing, Jews in these horrible stereotypical caricatures and blaming them for the loss of World War I and things like that. So, we are trying to show students that you don't just take things at face value, but to really dive a little bit deeper, just a little bit. And you can usually find out, the real facts and truth about what you're reading.
Yeah. He used their loss of World War I, used that to get the people fired up, and that's what he did. He would say, blame it on the Jews. He did, yeah.
Unfortunately, the Jewish community has been a scapegoat for a lot of different nations' ills over the thousands of years, and Hitler took advantage of that for sure. He blamed the loss of World War I on the Jewish soldiers who didn't fight the right way, or and certainly with the economics between the wars too, blaming that on the Jewish community to get those millions of people to go along with this anti-Semitic campaign, I guess you want to call it.
Yeah, he was very good at that. Like the study of what he did and how he could get people who were good people to change, to be another way, to change.
Right. And it wasn't just him. He had high-ranking officials that all went along with it. Some even tried to back it up with science, with the study of eugenics. When there was a conference held in Berlin called the Wannsee Conference, and it brought together all of these high-ranking Nazi officials, and they were not dumb people. They were people with PhDs. They were lawyers. They were physicians, military strategists. They all got together and decided that their goal would be to get rid of the Jewish population throughout Europe, and they decided that in just a few hours. So it wasn't. Germany was a very, very civilized country, very advanced in terms of education and scientific breakthroughs and all of these things, and yet they still decided to do this based on a pseudoscience.
Why is there that, I don't know if it's a conversation or just nonsense. Some of it, I think, is that the Jews control the media, the Jews, this attack against them still in this, and by young people, like people that don't have a clue about that, really.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they read about it, but I don't think they do because
That's it, right? That's it. No, I mean, I think it's partly because of social media. Social media is propagating a lot of these lies. And I also think that a lot of these individuals are getting wrapped up isn't really the right word, but it's what their other peers are saying, and or you see it a lot in some college protests, and I think individuals wanting to make a difference, and unfortunately just going with the flow rather than really thinking about the things that they're saying and the ideas that they're espousing. Just
oddly, that's what they were doing back then too. People
right,
were,
right.
Wow.
It's I think that's part of the problem that people are really not there. There is a, I don't want to call it a willful ignorance, but just people really not thinking for themselves. And again, it's a really divisive time in this country. I mean, we have so many issues as a country, of course, just like every other country.
Yeah.
And people always want someone to blame.
Yeah.
And yes, we did see that during Nazi Germany. And unfortunately, the Jews are being scapegoated right now.
Yeah.
And it's just horrific to see. I would never in a million years want anybody to suffer the types of things that I'm seeing and hearing, especially, when they're your friends, but even still. And I think it's we all need to make sure that we're willing to speak up. And if we don't know enough, we feel like we don't know enough to speak up, we need to get the facts, whether it's doing our own research, talking to people in the community, whatever needs to happen. But we should all figure out a way and not only figure out a way, but find opportunities to speak out.
And we're in the greatest place in the world to be able to do that, the United States, which I love,
Exactly.
we're allowed to say
exactly
and express ourselves. And
we are very lucky.
I was never more proud when I visited Dachau of our country than when I saw those pictures, which, still to this day are embedded in my heart.
Right. And you had, our General Eisenhower and others made it a point to make sure that those photographs were taken at Liberation so that, people had evidence of what had happened, because we're still living in a time, and it's coming up, again and again, where people are denying that the Holocaust even occurred.
Why? How could they deny that?
It's a form of anti-Semitism. I mean, to say the same people sometimes that say the Holocaust didn't happen are the same people that are cheering that it did. Where people are either they're saying it never happened, or they're saying, oh, well, it happened, but, it was far fewer people. All of these lies, and, it's pure and simple, they either want to say that, the Jews are making it up, or that they're just, claiming victimhood rather than, this actual story being very, very true. And because the evidence is there, we had people who survived, we had the Nazis who kept excellent records, and the images that came out after liberation. And, you have, if you look purely in the terms of the statistics, how many people were alive before the war in the Jewish community in all these countries, and how many people were left. I mean, the Jewish population, and I can't remember the number right now off the top of my head, is still not back to where it was pre-Holocaust in terms of worldwide population of Jews. So, I mean, that there tells you, that this horrible genocide occurred.
The resilience of their spirit is remarkable to me.
Yeah.
One of my other favorite books is Thou Shalt Prosper by Daniel Lapin. I don't know how you pronounce his name. He's a rabbi who talks about the success of Jews in business, how they're really good at business. And I admire that. I think it's fascinating to me that they represent a small population of the global population of the world, but yet they're very, very effective and good at business. And he just talks about some of the
obviously not every Jewish person, but I think that there's a in a lot of the Jewish communities there's a culture of education and really what's the word, investing in education is very important to many Jewish communities. Not everywhere, but I think that's why you see some individuals being very successful in different industries.
Yeah, which is that's something I admire. That's something that's a good thing. I look up to them for that because, or in the book he was teaching about how and why that is, and just that. But there's a spirit amongst them that is resilient and amazing. So I was just admiring it from that perspective. Not saying that they control everything. They didn't become. Doesn't seem to me that they become victims of that. It happened, and yet their lives, they're not. They want people to know that it happened, and I get that part of it because I think history is so important. And the more I learn about it, like later in life, because I didn't pay attention much in school, or it didn't seem like it sunk in, like it was so far removed.
Sure.
Anything in black and white was removed for me. Like, oh, that was black and white. That was like a different, not my life.
And I think the way it's taught, it has changed over the years. Whether like some teachers only want to teach about the Holocaust in terms of a textbook, these photos that we have seen over and over again, and dates and historic events, and the way we teach it is through stories of people.
So there's something about you that's had you have this be your life's mission. Who's had a big influence on you growing up?
My mother. I lost my mom a couple years ago, so.
I'm sorry.
I mean, no doubt that, my mother, of course, we grew up in a very tiny, tiny town. No diversity at all in my town. I don't know if there was any Jewish people living in my town. But we were from New York. We knew lots of Jewish people in New York, and my mother grew up with lots of Jewish friends and a diverse school too. And so, people were just people. And that's how I was brought up. But my mother was also very generous. When I was in high school, she took in unwed mothers who were pregnant and kicked out of their homes so that they could have a place to live, and which is very interesting now that I think back, because still having a child at home, she did that. It was very, very brave. She volunteered and did all sorts of great things too, besides working full time. So she was a huge influence on my life. Obviously, so many Holocaust survivors that I've worked with. Just the fact that they could, get up every morning with a huge smile on their face because they had the opportunity to speak to students, because I saw it every single day, and I still see it every single day. These people that are so very generous to tell this most horrific story of their life with strangers, just because they want to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And obviously my family, my kids and my husband have had a wonderful impact, but in different ways.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I would definitely say my mother, and there was a Holocaust survivor I used to work with. Her name was Eva, and she survived Auschwitz with her mother. Her father was immediately murdered when they arrived, but her mother survived. She unfortunately passed away 2 weeks later because she had typhus. But Eva was a volunteer where I used to work. Every Friday, she and her husband, who was also a survivor, but he emigrated before the war started, Every Friday they worked in the museum store, and she never, ever, ever wanted to tell her story because it was very hard for her. And finally, she agreed that she would be interviewed for our archives. And the morning of, she told me no, she couldn't do it because she had had nightmares for the last week, just getting ready to tell, with the anxiety of having to tell her story. And so she was never recorded like in that typical, what we call a regular survivor testimony, a traditional survivor testimony interview. But towards the end of her life, she would come out from behind the gift shop when she'd see people looking at photos of her as a child in the exhibit. And she'd walk up to them and she'd point herself out and she'd tell little bits of her story. And I think it's because of that urgency that I spoke about, that she knew that, she was an elderly woman. So she knew that she didn't have that much time. She was healthy and everything. So it's not like she was dying or anything, but she knew she had a limited time and she wanted to make sure that people remembered her.
Yeah.
And remembered her name and remembered her story. So that's why I do what I do.
What was your mom's name?
My mom's name was Debbie.
Debbie? How would she describe you?
I think she would describe me as smart and generous and optimistic. My husband and my mother would probably say the same thing, but my husband always tells me that sometimes he says that I always look for the best in people, and sometimes I shouldn't, but because it's, I do.
Yeah.
I always like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I don't hold grudges, or at least I try not to, and I think that comes from my mom.
How did she pass?
She had her family, her mother and her brother all had some heart disease, of familial hypocholesterol or high cholesterol. And so she died from heart failure. She had an LVAD. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
It's a left ventricle assist device, which is like transplanted into the heart. It's like a motor for your heart.
Okay.
And she had to, in the last couple of years of her life, that happened, and she had to like carry around an external battery that had a line, and it had within like 6 months of her having it, they realized she had an infection in it.
Thanks.
And the infection is what ultimately caused her passing. So.
Did you know she was going to go? Were you with her?
I mean, no. So she was like sick. This was spring of 21. I was in the middle of interviewing Holocaust survivors in this very in-depth new technology that I was doing, this week-long project. And I took the weekend to go with her to Orlando, and she was just really like no energy, and I couldn't figure out. And so I took her to the ER in Orlando. We lived in St. Pete. And she had one of her heart ventricles had basically failed, and they were going to do nothing. And then they finally settled on doing this LVAD thing, which it's not like it could give her up to 15 more years. And so they did that, and it should have been fine. She was great for a while, but then she got this infection. And I don't think any of us really knew how bad it was. And I talked to her the morning she died, but she had been rushed to the ER because she fell and couldn't get back up. But she fell because it had caused an infection in her, like it went to her nervous system, and like so she had some pain and stuff in her hip and lower back, and that's how she died. I'm glad I got to talk to her that morning, but obviously I would have talked to her about a bunch of different things. I was in Maine at the time for work, and unfortunately I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry. But I do appreciate you sharing about your mom, because I know, I can tell you had a great relationship with your mom. It was really special, and I love hearing
She was a
about
good person.
good mommy stories. Yeah, especially when they're good people like that. You know, you were connected with her your whole life. There was not a period of time where she kicked you out of the nest and you were on your own, but you stayed related together for.
Oh yeah, no, my mother
life.
was like, I mean, she probably would have let me live with her forever.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, she did a good job on you. That's great. If you weren't doing this, what do you think you'd be doing?
Ooh. I think I would still be doing something with, this nonprofit world that I work in, because the museum is a nonprofit. So giving back to the community in some other way. Like I said, my mother used to help women who were pregnant who didn't have a place to go. So, that's something that I feel very passionately about. And also because of different ways it's touched people in my family. I know I have family members who have benefited from women's shelters and things like that. So I probably would have done something else in one of those types of nonprofits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I can't picture myself doing something else.
Anything but.
I was going to, I originally went to, my first year of college, I went for kinesiology because I used to dance. But I can't even imagine that now. So, yeah.
So there's a dancer in you.
Yeah. I mean, my last, or when we were still living in Maine before I transferred universities, I had my own dance studio for a few years.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was fun. But it's different life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you get into your first job in the Holocaust world?
Oh, sure. I was a year out of college. I was working as an admin for an engineering firm. And when I was in school, I had done an internship at an art museum. And I knew I wanted to work in a museum. And so a position opened up at the Florida Holocaust Museum in St. Pete for a registrar. And the registrar is the person that takes care of the collection, that catalogs it, that does, some preservation, that preps things for exhibit, things like that. And that was the position that was open, and I applied for it. I had done some of that in my internship position at another local museum, and I got that job. And when I first started at that Holocaust Museum, I had taken a couple courses in college that touched on the Holocaust or were about it, and I learned about it in school, but I didn't know nearly what I know now, of course. So it hadn't yet been a passion, but it was really, working with Holocaust survivors, working with their family members, their children. I couldn't help but feel the same, maybe not the same urgency, but feel that same passion about wanting to tell this story. I couldn't, there's nothing else I could have done. And so, I learned about the Holocaust survivor stories through those relationships, but also through all of the materials that they've donated. And like our museum, we receive a lot of materials, artifacts donated from local survivors and their families. So, getting to be a steward of those things is pretty special. It's definitely a privilege. I feel so lucky to have done this work.
In visiting the local museum, what are some things that would be interesting to see?
So we tell the story of the Holocaust, very chronologically, as one might expect. But we do it through the stories of locals or Holocaust survivors who've come to the United States and decided to settle in Southwest Florida. So, for example, people visiting the museum will read the story of Renee Fritz, who was a hidden child. She was hidden in a convent in Belgium, and she was raised as a Catholic, even though she was Jewish, while she was in hiding. And so you'll see her First Communion veil. It's one of my favorite objects that we have on view. Or the story of Rob Nossen, who I spoke about earlier, a survivor of a camp called Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia, and hear about his story through some objects and through his testimonies and stories that he shared. So, I could go on and on. We have survivors of Auschwitz where we have their testimonies, and we have a gallery that's specifically about Auschwitz. So we have their testimonies available to individuals to listen to and to watch. So people will hear the history through individual stories. And our exhibit ends with, of course, liberation, and we talk about some liberators, some American GIs who liberated these camps, and what happened in the post-war years with survivors not being able to return home because they were not met with welcome signs and cheering. They were met with a lot of aggression in most cases.
Why?
Well, a lot of times non-Jews moved into their homes. They benefited from the Jews being deported and murdered.
Wow.
I
never thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, it happened a lot. I remember talking with a woman whose husband was a survivor, and she was telling me about how they went to visit Poland just so he could show her where he was from and things like that. And they knocked on the door of where he used to live and just said, can we come in and just so I can show my wife? I don't want anything. And they could see, he saw his furniture that he remembered as a child in the house, through that open door. So, I mean, this happened in I don't want to say most cases, but a lot of cases. Yeah. Or, there were some places where Jews returned to their town and they were met with violence. That happened in a number of places. Or, they were their apartment buildings, their homes were razed to the ground because of war.
Yeah.
That happened. So they were, if one couldn't emigrate or go back to their home right away, they were in DP camps, displaced persons camps, for years and years and years. All the way up into the 1956 was when the last DP camp.
That long.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a very interesting history because a lot of the first DP camps were in the same places as the concentration camps. And sometimes they were housed with displaced Germans.
Oh my gosh.
Which was very difficult, and conditions weren't great there either, with disease and lack of medical care.
Yeah.
So there was something called, I think, the Harrison Report, where a report was written on these DP camps to the State Department, and it wasn't until after that conditions improved. But DP camps were kind of that first place where Holocaust survivors kind of came back to life. There was a huge baby boom, as there was after the war anyway. But in these DP camps, so many survivors got, married other survivors and had children in the DP camps before they emigrated to the U.S. or there's survivor communities in Australia, in South Africa, in South America, lots of different places. And so we also tell that story. We have a few objects, like we have a little baby's winter coat that was made in a displaced persons camp for a child that was born in a DP camp. And we also tell the story of post-war justice, of what Nuremberg was all about and how it really set the precedent for other future war crimes trials. Our exhibit ends with a gallery that's all about contemporary hate, contemporary genocides. So we talk a little bit about what the identifiers for genocide are, so people can understand what's going on in the world when they watch the news. And we also talk about Upstanders, and that's really what we want our educational programs. That's the goal of our educational programs, to create Upstanders, people in the community that are willing to, speak out, stand up, do the right thing. And so we talk about a few examples of those types of people too.
That word is upstanders?
Upstanders.
Yeah, I saw that in researching this. What does that mean?
Well, during the war and during the Holocaust, we talk about when we bring groups through or adults, we focus that story through the lens of four people. You have perpetrators, of course, victims. You have bystanders, people who saw what was happening. They might not have agreed with what was happening, but they did nothing. And that was the biggest majority, the majority of people. And what we call upstanders. And those are the...
So say that again. Bystanders, say that, what a bystander
A
was again.
bystander is somebody who did nothing, who just watched what was going on and decided it is a choice to do nothing. So, and that's the vast majority of people during the war.
Yes.
Just your ordinary citizens who just went along with it.
Knew it was wrong, but
Knew it was wrong, or agreed with it, but didn't take part.
Okay.
Did not take an active role. And then the upstanders are those who took on an active role, who did something. And there are all sorts of different types of examples of upstanders. During the Holocaust, you had people that actually, there was a Japanese diplomat, Chiune Sugihara, who forged visas for people. There was Schindler, Oscar Schindler. People know his story.
That's the movie Schindler's List. Right?
Exactly. So he used the slave labor from the camps to save. I mean, employed isn't the right word, but he basically had all of these Jews working in his factory, and was able to save them because of that. Or Miep Gies, who was one of the people who helped the Anne Frank family while they were in hiding. All sorts of these stories, people who hid their neighbors. And there's lots of, those are all the famous ones.
Upstanders.
Okay. And there are even Jewish upstanders. You have lots of Jewish resistance fighters. For example, there was a group of brothers called the Belsky. We call them the Belsky brothers, but it was Tuvia, Zhush, and Asoyo Belsky who led the largest armed resistance and rescue of Jews by Jews during the war. They saved 1,200 Jews living in the forest of Belarus. Most of these people were not diplomats. Most of these people were just your everyday normal person going to work, coming home, who just made a decision to do the right thing. And sometimes it's a big decision, and sometimes it was a little thing, but sometimes that's all it takes.
What's an example of a modern day upstander in a middle school, maybe?
In a middle school, I mean, it's someone who you see your friend being picked on, and you either stand up for them right there against those who are doing the picking, or it's telling a teacher that this is happening and making sure it's stopped. That's an upstander.
Yeah,
that's what we want people to be. Or it can be there's also little things that people can do. Writing your Congress people for change that you want to see happen. Obviously, we all should vote. But we want people to take an active role in their communities to make small steps to make things better.
The upstanders, I like that. Okay, good.
We didn't make it up. I think it was originally penned by Samantha Power. But and a lot of Holocaust museums use this term because it really is. When we talk about bystanders versus victims, or bystanders versus perpetrators, I mean, we really have to recognize that during the Holocaust, there was a small group of people that made the choice to do. And I knew survivors who, one survivor, his name was Jerry, and he was hidden by a non-Jewish just a teenager. This wasn't, somebody with lots of his agency. He hid Jerry in his basement without his parents even knowing. And later he was hung for it. So, and that was a real threat for people who helped Jews during the Holocaust. Obviously now, the reprisal for doing such a thing, or for standing up for your friend in the hall at school, isn't going to bring something like that. But, everything comes with a consequence. And usually though, it has a great outcome when people decide to do the right thing.
Yeah. Do you think there's a survivor locally that would come on here? That I
Oh,
could talk to?
yeah.
Really?
Yes, of course. So next week, we have our fundraising event, Triumph, and we're honoring Rob Nossen, who is the survivor I talked to you about that was in Theresienstadt. He'd be a great interviewee.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd
Yeah.
be so cool.
And we have a few people in our community, like another lady, her name is Felicia. She was born in a displaced persons camp, or another lady named Hadassah, who was also born in a displaced persons camp. They have great stories to tell.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
So
Amazing.
yeah,
I'd love that.
absolutely.
Be so cool.
I'd love to send you their info.
All right, that would be great. I would really enjoy that. And appreciate that. It's a whole segment that the displacement camp. I thought once the war was over and they were liberated, that was the end. Like everything went back to okay. Didn't know about that post era that
and
lost.
Unfortunately, even if somebody went back to their home and let's say there was nobody living in, like they had nothing.
Yeah.
And even, the people who came to this country or wherever they immigrated to, in most cases, they went with nothing, absolutely nothing. So the vast majority of Holocaust survivors that I've known have, become very successful people, whether it's, in all different types of success, right? Like teachers and business people, philanthropists, all sorts of different stories here as their post-war story, but started with literally nothing. Nothing but the clothes on their back or $5 to their name,
Yeah. Well, that'd be really awesome to talk to some of those people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd be happy to pass along their information.
Who's on your board?
Who's on my board? We have lots of great active people on our board. They really care a lot about the mission. Our board chair is Stuart Mest. He's a retired physician from your neck of the woods, from Philadelphia.
Oh, Philly guy.
And you can definitely tell when you hear his accent.
Oh, that's awesome.
His parents were survivors. His father survived Auschwitz. His mother survived as a part of a partisan group in the woods. We have some people on our board that are not necessarily connected with this history.
Yeah.
Like we have one lady who her name is Dottie. She's not Jewish, but she feels very, very passionate about this subject. Felicia is one of our board members. She's what we call a 2G, a second generation. We have a few people that are children of survivors on our board, and they're from all over the place. So just everybody feeling very passionate.
How is the organization funded? How do you get money?
We have most of our funding comes through private individuals, people who feel very passionate about our mission and about preserving this history and the stories of survivors. And then we do get a little bit of funding from the state, or at least last year we did. That covers, all of our educational programs or some of our educational programs. And then locally, we get some funding, for example, from the Collier County Community Foundation and some smaller family foundations as well.
And you have the event that's coming up is part of the fundraising?
Yes, we have 2 fundraising events each year. One is in December. It's called the Luncheon. And we bring in a special speaker for that. The other, which is coming up next week on Wednesday the 4th, is called Triumph. And that during that event, the program consists, of course, of us speaking. But we have 2 awards that we give out. The first is our Triumph Award. So Rob Nossen, our Holocaust survivor, is getting that. And that's for people who have, made, have really overcome great odds and have given back to the community and to the museum. And then another award, and this year is our first, is our Humanitarian Award. We thought that since this is our 25th anniversary year, it would be a good time to introduce a new annual award. So we're giving out the Humanitarian Award this year to a woman named Paula Apsel, who is she's a filmmaker. She used to be the executive producer for PBS Nova, the Nova series. Mm-hmm. And she's made a few more recent films about some different subjects within the Holocaust. One was specifically about resistance because one of the I think it's kind of a revision, a Holocaust revisionist, a very anti-Semitic idea is that Jews went like lambs to slaughter, that they did nothing, or they contributed to their own demise. And so she really wanted to counter that. So she created this film about resistance, Jewish resistance during the war. And so she's getting our humanitarian award. But we have this event every year in March. So we're excited about it.
Well, I don't know who does your the organizing for those, but I'm sure your hands are involved in most. But
Yes.
but we have whatever you may need for volunteers or prizes or gifts. We'll always contribute to whatever you might need,
Oh, that's
haircuts and
wonderful.
product bags or whatever we can do
That's
to support
lovely.
you
Thank
like that.
you.
We'll always be here to do that for you too. Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
I appreciate that.
So keep that in mind, and I'll make sure you get in touch with or that Marina, who is our general manager, has your information so that she can get you whatever you need for throughout the
that's
year if
great.
you want to acknowledge volunteers or.
Like I'm not telling the public until next week at Triumph. So by the 10th, it'll be fine for me to mention the fact that because of the grant from the state, we're installing our boxcar permanently at the museum. And it'll give people the opportunity to get up close and personal with this artifact, to tell part of the story of what happened to the Jews during World War II. And it, people who don't even get to come into the museum for whatever reason, maybe they don't have time that day for a full museum visit, will still be able to see the boxcar because it'll be in our parking lot.
Oh, cool.
So that's happening this year.
And where is that?
That's at our location, which is at 975 Imperial Golf Course Boulevard.
What's the food that's near you? What's the restaurant that's near you?
Jack's.
Oh, okay. I know
Yeah.
where Jack's is.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it's in the same parking lot as Jack's.
Okay.
Yes.
And the boxcar is going to be in that parking lot?
Yes. As a permanent installation. So, for example, this year it's at a different school or a different library or community center every month.
Oh, it stays for a month.
Yeah, it stays for
Okay.
a month. But as of June, it'll come back to the museum.
Mm-hmm.
In June, it'll be there still on the tractor trailer, on the flatbed,
Yeah.
until we're basically have to, it'll be a little bit of a construction site once we start the installation process because it'll be fixed to the ground as opposed to being on a flatbed. Once that happens, but we're going to officially break ground probably this fall. So we're excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
we're
awesome.
very, very excited about that. And that's funded largely through the state of Florida.
Great.
Yeah.
Something that's been on my mind is how do you disconnect yourself emotionally when you go home, and you've done this for year after year after year and been directly connected and involved emotionally, invested in the people who have carried this with them for their lives. How do you do that?
I don't really know. I just do. I mean, well, and I don't. It depends. I mean, I was up at 3:00 in the morning this morning thinking about an idea, not necessarily thinking about the history so much as I was thinking about a new idea to tell the history. So I would say that I think about it all the time, and I would say that it's just part of me. I mean, it's been in the way I've raised my kids. It's been in, the activities I like to do after work. I will say that I don't, at home, I don't read books or watch movies usually about this history.
Sure. You could write them and direct them.
Well,
Yeah.
for one, a lot of what comes out are fictional stories, and I don't think it's necessary. There are already the most amazing true stories to tell, and why spend time doing that when I can tell the story of a real person that lived this history? So I try not to do that, and it's not because I don't think it's important or anything. I just that is one way that I try to step away from work. But most of the time I don't see it as work, Obviously there's in anybody's job, there's parts of a job that are less likable than others.
Mm.
Doing paperwork or expense reports or whatever it is. That's not as great as having to get to interact with Holocaust survivors or having to interview one or getting to tell stories. Those are all the best things. And I mean, thank God every day I get to do this work.
Mm. Well, we're lucky to have you in our community for that.
Well, thanks.
too. Yeah.
I'm glad to be
you.
here. It's been great so far.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Shift gears a little bit, lighten it up a little. If your life was a movie, what would the opening soundtrack be?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea because you can look at that in terms of what's that's something that you play the most often or something that's like a theme song. I really don't have one, really. I mean, repeat your question again.
If your life was a movie, what would the opening soundtrack be?
How Great Thou Art. It's a Christian hymn.
Ah, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's one that hasn't been on the podcast yet. I like that. Books that you're currently reading, have read, or that are on your must-read list?
Okay. I'm currently reading Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I think that's the name of the author. He wrote A Man Named Uwe. The Tom Hanks, they made a movie. I think they called him something different in that movie, but A Man Named something. I don't know what they called him. But
Was he like a cranky guy in that one?
Yes.
Yeah. I saw
So
him
he's the author of the book that inspired that.
That was a good movie. Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah, that was a good movie. And that was a good book. So I'm reading Beartown right now.
Same author that wrote that. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's part of a series, but this is the first one in the series. And favorite books, is that what you said?
Or just, books that you'd put on a list like you should probably read this. Yeah. If you were telling somebody else. I keep a compilation of our guests, the books that are in their...
Oh, man. I mean, I read a lot. So I think my last, what I would call a 5-star read was, I think it was called Broken Country, but I can't remember the author. That was really great. Since I'm talking about what I do, I think everybody should read Night by Elie Wiesel, which is his memoir, his experience during the Holocaust.
Oh, okay.
And certainly when reading things about the Holocaust, you should read real stories by real people that survived it.
Any that stand out that you...
Night, for sure.
Yeah.
Primo Levi's book, and I cannot remember the title of it, was excellent. He was a Holocaust survivor.
What was the name?
Primo Levi.
Okay.
Primo Levi. There's a wonderful book by a granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor. Her name is Rachel Serrati. Her book is called... Oh my gosh. I cannot. I just...
Her name.
Rachel Serrati.
Okay, we'll get it from that. Yeah.
She's a good friend of mine.
Oh, awesome.
She would be appalled that I can't remember the name of her book. So it's called We Share the Same Sky. It's an excellent, excellent memoir, and it's her story as a granddaughter who basically followed her grandmother's footsteps. As a young woman, she decided that she would go every place that her grandmother went in the same order. So her grandmother was from Czechoslovakia and went to Denmark as a teen. Her parents sent her to Denmark as a teen, where she would go to learn like some agricultural skills to prepare herself to go to what was then British Mandate Palestine, to work on a kibbutz or something like that, which were agricultural communities. Instead, Denmark was occupied by the Nazis in 1941, and in 1943, their Danish fishermen and regular individuals ferried their Jewish neighbors and civilians and refugees, like Hannah was her name, to Sweden. And so Rachel went from Czechoslovakia, met some of the family members. Her grandmother's family were all murdered in Sobibor, I think. but went from there to Denmark, to Sweden, back to the U.S. and across the country to California, which was all part of her grandmother's trip, and wrote about the people that she met that were connected with this history and how it was for her as a granddaughter to be telling and saving this story. So I worked with her on an exhibit as well about this. It's an excellent, excellent memoir, and it really talks about what it's like as a granddaughter with this kind of legacy.
Yeah. We share the same sky.
Yes.
I love that title.
Yes, that was. I think she said her mother-in-law used to say that, because we all share the same sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Especially, knowing that her grandmother was saved because of the kindness of others.
Yeah. Any podcasts that you're a regular of?
Well, We Share the Same Sky is a podcast.
Oh, it's
also.
a podcast.
It started as a podcast before she wrote the book.
Oh, great.
And it's excellent, excellent. It has testimonies in there. It has her, all of her trips. So since you said that, that's a great one. I also listen to some things that I, when I want my brain to be off, My Favorite Murder. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's a famous podcast about true crime.
Oh, yeah.
It's a comedy true crime podcast.
Oh, is it? I don't know that one, though. Yeah, I'm all over true crime.
It's been out for a long time.
Yeah.
So I like that one. And I also listen to, I'm all over the place. It's Barry Weiss's podcast, but I can't think of the name of it.
Okay.
Yeah, Honestly, I think it's called.
Okay.
Which is like a politics news podcast, but not very often. I listen to a lot of books too. So I read a lot of books and I also listen to a lot of books.
That's how I mostly consume books, is through Audible too.
Yeah, it takes me 30 minutes or sometimes an hour to get to or from work. So I listen in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great use of time. Yeah, I like that too.
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, I just downloaded all my Audible books so that I have them, and it's not just on Audible, but and I created my own little catalog of them because I have.
I use the library. The library has really great apps. Sometimes you have to wait for an audiobook to get available.
Well, how's that work? What do you mean?
So if you have a library card, you can use. I use Libby is one, or I think it's called iCloud Library or something like that. And and both of those apps are through the same library system, and you can just search for your book. Sometimes they don't have it available, or sometimes other people are watching however many, or listening to however many are licensed to that particular library, and you might have to wait and put a hold on it, just like you would for a physical book.
Yeah, okay.
But it's an actual, it's the same as what you would hear in Audible with like actors or whatever reading the books. So
I didn't know what the library was used for these days.
Free.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. Yeah,
it's free.
Yeah, and
the best part.
Wow.
Especially because I read them all the time.
And you don't have to go there.
A lot of money with Audible.
You do it online. You don't have to go to the library. Okay.
It's all online.
That's great. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I love that.
Now you know.
Yeah, I like that.
You just have to get a library card.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I haven't done that in a long time, but yeah, there's a use for that. Okay. That's great to hear they've evolved. I didn't realize that.
Yes,
okay.
It's very good. I mean, if people use Kindles, you can also do, ebooks too, but I use it for the audiobooks.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah. How about music?
I love Dave Matthews Band.
Have you seen him?
People. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we've been to lots of concerts.
Yeah. Saw him at the Tampa Fairgrounds.
Yeah. That's the same. Most of the concerts we went to were there too, because that's where we lived.
Yeah. Great show, gosh. He's awesome. Oh gosh, performer.
Really great show. Yeah.
You don't have the Dancing Nancy on you anywhere? You have a
I do. Do I have it on my car?
You have it on the car? Yeah.
I don't know. It was in an accident last year. I can't remember if I got it on the new car or not. A fire dancer? Yeah. I don't know.
The fire. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if I have it on this car, but almost every car that I've had has had one.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, no, we're big fans of Dave Matthews Band. I also like Red Clay Strays. It's a new favorite.
Who's that?
Red Clay Strays.
What's that? What genre is that?
Country-ish,
is it?
I think.
All right.
I don't know if they're really country. I don't know what they're categorized as, but I'm not really normally a country lover.
Right.
Unless it's like 90s country. So, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what they are, but I like them.
All right. Add them to the playlist. You're the first Dave Matthews guest.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I also like gospel music, too, which is a weird mix all around, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's good. You have good taste in music if you can be all over the place.
Yeah.
Not just limited
do.
to.
I listen to, I like old stuff too. Stuff my parents used to listen to.
Yeah. I get to add Dave to the playlist. That's great.
Yeah.
'Cause I do love Dave. Yeah, Dave's good stuff. What's something most people don't know about you but should?
But should. I don't know. I'm kind of like an open book. I really am. I'm just an average person trying to do the right thing in every part of my life. I don't think people should know this, but a lot of people don't know this, or at least people here. I used to play roller derby up until COVID. Yeah.
Play real life roller derby.
Roller derby, yeah.
Roller derby is the one where you like knock each other out of that thing, no?
Well, yeah, you're not supposed to use elbows. That's in the new, there's the roller derby that people think of from like the 70s where it's kind of like WWII.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's what I know it as.
But there are actual rules. You're not supposed to use anything below like your upper arm down. So you're not supposed to elbow people. You're not supposed to use your hands. Whoops.
But taking people out is part of the game, though.
Yeah, you want to knock people. You want to. So basically, there's five people on each team out on the track at once, and you try to. And of those five, one is what they call a jammer, and that's the person that scores points. So you want to try to block the jammer from getting through, and sometimes. So obviously, you either want to hold them back or hit them off the track. So yes.
So that's real. It really is
Yes,
going on in the
it's
modern
a real
day.
thing. I think
Fort
Fort Myers has a team.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How fun
I
that
used
would be
to play
see.
banked track, like what you've probably seen old videos of.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't think there's another. That bank track closed because of COVID, and I don't think they've started it back up again. But so most teams nowadays, because it's cheaper than renting out an arena to put up a track in, play what's called flat track, and it's just like at a regular
It's
state.
not those big steep turns.
Right.
Okay.
But that's what I used to do.
Wow. So are they using blades now or
No quads.
Yeah. Okay, so they're still around.
Yeah, definitely no blades.
Big difference.
Yes.
Harder, easier? What's the difference?
Well, when you play roller derby, you need to rely on you don't rely on the stops that come. You do.
On the tip, the stops.
Yeah, for turning around and things like that. But for blocking and things, you don't rely on that. So the quads really help you to kind of dig in and stop and slow down.
Okay.
But I don't know. The other difference is the boot style with a inline skate versus a quad skate's very different. So you can have most of those inline skates, the things go up to here, whereas the boot for a quad is at your ankle and you have more mobility.
Any videos floating online
there's
about
tons,
you with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, really? Yeah. Oh, Zach, you got to pull this up. This is great. That's fantastic.
I don't remember what I look like then, but yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Great. Oh, we're gonna have to drop.
Because we used to do themed bouts where people would dress up as zombies or wear crazy outfits. So yeah,
that's so cool. Oh, great. See, I knew there was a hidden talent there that we needed to know about.
Sure,
that's great. All right, the finale of it all, the final question. What do you love about your life?
I love my family. I love spending time with my kids. And I love what I do. Really, obviously I go on vacations sometimes and things like that, but I go to work and I come home. So that is obviously the biggest parts of my life. I love telling stories. I love the people I work with. And, my family's my everything. So that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to do this.
Of course, yeah. How was it?
It's great that you do this.
Well, yeah, it's awesome for me to get to meet I'm surrounded by, because Naples is kind of blessed with some really great souls.
Yeah, I've met some wonderful, wonderful people here.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.